between a migrant and a refugee, sharing it on social media. A refugee is someone who has fled their country to escape war or persecution. If you're a refugee, countries have obligations under international law to protect you. A migrant is someone who's left their country for reasons other than fleeing persecution or war, and there isn't the same set of legal obligations for countries to help or protect migrants. Well, David Cameron, as you heard in Jim's report, is resisting calls for the UK to take more refugees, but is it time? Let's get a snapshot of public opinion. Catherine, what do you think?
Absolutely. It's overtime actually now. I think he is right. We do need to find a solution to the underlying problem, but that isn't going to happen overnight, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who are really, really suffering, and the people like you, me and my colleagues around the table today, and it's just shocking and shameful that we're not helping.
And when did you come to that conclusion about helping more refugees? Very
recently, I'm sad to say, because I feel slightly ashamed that I'm being carried along on a wave of Twitter. I've only just joined Twitter, and one of my first accounts that I've been following is Dawn Porter, who's been trying to put together a big I don't know what you'd call it, but it's a wave now of support from just general normal people in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, who are trying to get support, not just to Calais actually, but it's now gone to Greece, and that has been just such a huge wave of support, and every single day that's what we see.
Dawn Porter is a British journalist and TV presenter.
She
now
is.
Steve, tell Catherine why you think Britain shouldn't take more refugees, so people from Syria, from Eritrea, parts of Iraq.
Well, in particular, England is the most densely populated country in the world, in Europe certainly, and I think it's about the second in the world. We are given all these signals that we're in financial hardship. We have lots of people, needy people in England, who need the resource and the humanitarian support from central government. And you have to remember, every time we give resources to somebody from another country, then somebody from this country who is needy, let's say they're disabled, or maybe they're a war veteran, or maybe they've suffered some sort of catastrophe in their life, then they're losing resource, and it's been given to somebody who's made no contribution to our economy or to our taxes. And we also have no obligation under international law, as we just described, in terms of these are refugees who should be seeking sanctuary at the first safe port of call. Now, to get to England...
Which would mean Greece, Italy would be completely overwhelmed.
Well,
is that fair?
They are the rules, and we as the UK always conform to the rules. We've had problems in terms of over migration for 10 years, and to a certain extent, if that hadn't occurred, maybe we could be more humanitarian at this point.
It's an easy thing to hide behind, isn't it? We can say, well, the rules are they've arrived in Greece first, Greece has to deal with them, as if somehow Greece can cope with all these migrants. And we're sitting here going,
we're talking about refugees,
you're right, sorry. So well, Greece, there's all these refugees coming in, and we go, it's fine, they've arrived in Greece, they've arrived in Italy, they can deal with them there. But the reality is they can't deal with them there, and we're not taking any of that burden from them. We're saying, well, we'll take a couple of hundred maybe, and that's it. Whereas meanwhile, there are people there trying to cross the Mediterranean and dying, and we're going, well...
We take in thousands every year.
In terms of Syrians, Britain has taken 5,000 Syrians in the last 4 years. Over the next 3 years, Britain has agreed to take in 500. Now,
we took 1,000 in last year.
A couple more facts. 4 million Syrians have fled their country because of the war. That's a sixth of their population. 4 million. Britain's taking 500 over the next couple of years through one particular scheme. Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah. But... what we should be doing is sorting it out at source. Like the idea of what David Cameron says, we're going to bring stability to Syria.
Can you see any sign of that?
Well, no, what we can do, if all the EU countries got together, the amount of money they're spending on trying to deal with this refugee problem is by making a safe zone in Syria and in Libya, so people could be able to settle in peace.
Do you think IS or President Assad would respect a safe zone in Syria?
I think IS wouldn't.
So it wouldn't be very safe.
Yeah, but you know, the Syrians would accept it.
Can I just remind you, though, that Kofi Annan resigned in 2012 because he failed. The UN failed. Everyone has failed to broker this peace deal that would then lead to our ability to send the refugees home again for them to resettle.
Yeah, in principle, you've got to think about it this way. Okay, in the long term, I fully agree. In an ideal world, there should be no refugees. We need to help build those countries to address human rights violations and to have a peacekeeping process. But this is a humanitarian crisis happening right now, not in the long term. What use will it be for the mothers who are putting their child in a boat because being on the boat is safer than being on land right now, if in 20 years there's going to be peacetime?
What about the English children that are suffering from cancer at this precise moment in time, and the drugs aren't available for an English child born in this country, and their parents have contributed to the economy for a long time, and the money isn't available to give that child life-saving drugs?
Can I
my vote goes for the English child, I'm afraid.
I want to bring Mustafa in, but
I don't think this is a zero-sum game.
hang on, Mustafa, your parents came from Somalia to Britain in the 70s. They were fleeing civil war.
Yeah.
Do you see parallels with what's going on in Syria, Eritrea, with what happened to your parents?
I think it's a complete abdication of responsibility. I can see where you're coming from in terms of there's a lack of resources if for, let's say, the NHS or housing or education. But that's a capacity issue that's built up over 10 years plus through successive governments. It's not an either-or situation where you can say we can't help out refugees, or it's either refugees or our own. You can do two things at the same time. It's not. We've over successive years, the entire Middle Eastern region and parts of Africa have become destabilised. By whatever reason.
Who was responsible for the destabilisation?
Well, hang on.
Partly us. Partly us.
It was policy from the Labour and the Conservative parties,
I'm not
wasn't it?
disagreeing with you there.
And both of those, by the way, receive £3 million a year each from the British government to run their parties. Now, maybe that money should be given to refugees.
That's a completely different discussion around if you want to talk about corruption of governance and public policy in a different part of the world. But if you go back to the discussion about refugees, then you need to understand that if we're talking about refugees and the amount of refugees that have been taken in, the vast majority of those people have been taken in by neighbouring countries like Lebanon and Jordan. If those countries have been overwhelmed years ago, when we've barely started to cover it, not barely started to cover it, but the public conscience in terms of the civil war and the crisis has only really just people started to wake up because of that image that we've been talking about.
People around the world have woken up now because of the images that are being shared, particularly of the Syrian boy, the 3-year-old Syrian boy, and the image is clearly distressing. I'm going to show it one more time because I want to ask you if you think this is an image. And David and Steve, let me ask you first of all, that has the potential to shift political debate in this country and others?
Images are very powerful, but again, you could show an image of a child suffering from cancer, which has a similar effect. The other thing, of course, is
how moved are you by that?
Well, as I said, this issue should have been sorted out and a problem put to it years ago. We also have to consider the responsibilities of rich countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran. These are people who are closer to them. I've been to Saudi Arabia 3 times. It is a very wealthy country with lots of resources. Why aren't they taking people?
Okay.
Well, maybe sure they should. They should take people. So should the USA. So should other countries. But I don't live in those countries. I live in Britain. And I love being in Britain. It's great being British. I'm really proud of it. But the fact is that it takes a child dying and us to watch it to go, maybe we should do something about this. What kind of country do we want to be? Do we want to be one that goes, we will care for these people and look after them, or do we want to be a country that goes, you know what? Until we get to our own level, then we'll look after them instead.
Stop people leaving the shores of Syria in the first place.
And leave them to die there?
No,
well,
not to die. No.
Their houses being bombed, they are being...
You do this safe zone, and we can do
What
it.
safe zone?
We'll make a safe zone.
Where?
Where in
the
Syria,
meantime, what do we do?
It can
Okay,
be done.
what
But we haven't done it, and people are dying.
It hasn't
today.
been done, but
People
it
are
needs
dying
to
today,
be
so
done.
we need to react
yes,
today.
but the sort of money we're spending on refugees, if we spent that on building a safe zone and a town in Syria where people can come and live in safety, and they're living in their own land, so they won't be...
I agree, all these are wonderful ideas,
And
but what are we doing today to stop the people who are dying
refugees
today?
Well, this is what we should.
Okay,
The government should get together in the European Union and get out there
Absolutely
and put this
agreed.
safe zone
Totally.
and stop these people dying all
But
the
these
time.
people are...
Yeah, but they're dying even if
human
we don't
beings, it
stop
could
them
be
getting
your
in these
relatives.
dinghies.
Let me
They're
read-
drowning every day of the week.
Let me read some messages from people watching you
Right.
debate around the country. Morris has texted to say, we should consider what we in Europe would do in their situation. Would we not want our loved ones safely removed from harm? We must take more refugees and do our fair share. This texter says, by agreeing to take more refugees, it would not have stopped this boy's death. The questions need to be directed at Turkey. This texter says, I blame Germany for the boy's death. Originally, the refugees went to camps in Jordan, but the money has run out. Cameron is right. Scott texts to say, our response to the refugee crisis is disgusting. I'm embarrassed to be British. How can anyone look at the picture of that boy and say anything else? And Bernie says, send all migrants, and he uses the word migrants, back to their country of origin. Charity begins at home. Let's just watch that clip of David Cameron from yesterday, where he's effectively resisting calls to take any more refugees in Britain.
The most important thing is to try to bring peace and stability to that part of the world. I don't think there is an answer that can be achieved simply by taking more and more refugees.
Do you think David Cameron is going to stick to that, or might he change his view?
We are currently trying to pressure him to change his views. There is a petition on the Parliament website to address this, and we are hoping to send in enough signatures to bring it into Parliament. So I'm urging anyone back home reading this, please find that petition on the government website and sign it, because we can do this.
There is sorry,
I
Mustafa.
personally think he's likely to change his
I'm going to
viewpoint
pause.
on
I'm
this.
so sorry, because we're going to hear from the Hungarian Prime Minister, who's in the heart of this. His name is Viktor Orban, and he's talking now.
Keep the regulation. It's not the decision of the Hungarian authority. It's a European decision. We agreed on that, so we have to do so. Wherever they are registered. If the border control is effective, they will be registered at border control. If it is not good enough, we have to do somewhere. When they would like to leave the country or at the railway station, but they must be registered. This is the European value and the European regulation.
The Schengen Treaty is under threat. This is absolutely clear. And if we don't solve the problem, then the threat for the free movement will increase. But I belong to those who are not prepared to reduce a fundamental right guaranteed to European citizens and to put it in doubt because we have an influx of refugees to the European Union. We can't manage by not missing European rules, by missing European solidarity to introduce common rules facing that challenge. And I must repeat, it is just 2 months ago that the 28 heads of states and government, including Viktor Orban, discussed a whole night about 40,000 people to relocate. He was very outspoken, I must admit it, at the beginning, because he said this is not a meaningful debate. But at the end, he agreed also to the solution of non-binding attempt to relocate 40,000. Until today, we have even not relocated 30,000. And therefore, I think we need a common approach to assure Schengen and internal free movement. We need a clarification on 3 different levels. We have to find a common basis for legal immigration to the European Union. This is the best way to fight illegal immigration. Secondly, we need enlarged instruments for temporary protection of those people who are fleeing war-torn regions, like the Syrians or the Iraqis for the time being. These are people who are either immigrants nor political refugees. These are people who need our protection and want to return at home when the disaster there are over. And the third one is the political asylum, and the political asylum, which is a very important instrument of European policy, comes under threat if we put immigration, temporary protection, everything under the rule of the Dublin Convention. And I agreed with Victor, who himself was a man living in a dictatorship, politically oppressed. He understands very well how political asylum is so important. Asylum seekers of today, protected here by us, are the democratic governments of the regions under dictatorships in the future. Therefore, we should protect also political asylum by making that difference between legal immigration, temporary protection, and political asylum. And to find this solution...
Martin Schulz, President of the European Parliament, and also before that you heard from the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. I wonder what you think of the way politicians across Europe are trying to deal with this.
You can see the distinct difference between ourselves, Germany and other European countries in the way they're handling it, where we've, as a country, have built up, or we've allowed discourse in use a language like swarm of people, send in the troops. How many more can we take? When you compare that to, boat people. When you contrast that with other European countries, when we talk, and they're talking about putting banners up saying "Welcome, refugees, welcome," and it's just you understand the difference in how people are handling it, and it's.
But the politicians appear to be as far away from a solution as they ever were.
But this is a distinctly European problem that needs a distinctly European solution.
That's the criticism in terms of the European Union has been going for 20 years now, or over 20 years. This crisis was going to happen at some point. Yeah. The idea that the borders around the European Union shouldn't be secure, and you've got Hungary sort of busy putting borders up, and then it's a big surprise when a crisis goes. This crisis might not have been a war; it might have been a natural disaster like a hurricane or such like. The European Union, with all the bureaucracy, all the money it's got, it should have planned for something like this.
Okay. Vic, can I just some more comments that Viktor Orban has just made, which he said before we got to him live. Hungarians are full of fear. Europeans are full of fear. They see that European leaders are unable to control the situation. He went on to say, "Don't criticise Hungary for doing what has to be done," and he's making reference, I think, to effectively the authorities there allowing people to get on those trains to Austria and Germany rather than them applying for asylum in Hungary.
I mean, I can't help but notice how we always frame the issue of refugees, specifically in this case, and the issue of migration as something that needs to be controlled, contained. Refugees are people who take resources from us. Refugee children versus children taking from cancer. How do we divide resources? Now, I would like to propose to reframe this.
Briefly, if you would.
Bryndis Björkvik, the Icelandic writer who advocated that Icelanders open their home to Syrian refugees, said, refugees are human resource. They might be our future spouses, our future co-workers, people who make significant contributions to our society. So if we give refugees, if we welcome them and we give them the chance to be part of our society and to contribute to our society, then children with cancer will benefit as well.
I'd be happy for all the refugees to go to Iceland.